Greetings, I am Reverend David, and I'd like to welcome you to our weekly worship podcast, currently taking place at St. Francis Church in Palos Verdes Estates, 10:15 a.m. Sunday mornings. If you would like to receive notifications when we upload our weekly podcast, please like and subscribe to our channel. We do hope that this week's message inspires you to live a life of love and usefulness.
All right, good morning. Let's see, this morning we have readings from Genesis, a continuation, the Psalms, Isaiah, the Gospel of Matthew, and Emanuel Swedenborg. But a little note about the Genesis reading, a little note about birthright. In ancient Israel, the birthright, or the order of birth, implies both inheritance and spiritual blessings. To give it away or to sell it for immediate gratification shows a lack of forethought and understanding of long-term spiritual and family responsibilities. Now, keep that in mind as you hear Genesis 25, verses 19 through 34. These are descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel and Aramean of Padan Aram, sister of Laban the Aramean. Okay. Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is to be this way, why do I live?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." When her time to give birth was at hand, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy mantle, so they named him Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man living in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he was fond of game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was famished. Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished." Therefore he was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I am about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread, lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Psalm 119, verses 105 to 112. Your word is a lantern to my feet and a light upon my path. I have sworn and am determined to keep your righteous judgment. I am deeply troubled. Preserve my life, O Lord, according to your word. Accept, O Lord, the willing tribute of my lips, and teach me your judgments. My life is always in my hand, yet I do not forget your law. The wicked have set a trap for me, but I have not strayed from your commandments. Your decrees are my inheritance forever. Truly they are the joy in my heart. I have applied my heart to fulfill your statutes forever and to the end. Let's move on to Isaiah 55, 10 through 13. As the rain and snow came down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out of my mouth. It shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish that which I propose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. You shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress, instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle. And it shall be to the Lord for a memorial, for an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. From the Gospel of Matthew, 13, verses 1 through 9, 18 through 23. Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, Listen, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on the rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such person has no root, but endures only for a while. When trouble of persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields to nothing. But as for the sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, in another 30. From Emanuel Swedenborg, Doctrine of Life, 90. The truth is what is meant by seed sown in the field, of which the Lord said the following: A sower went out to sow his seed, and as he sowed, some fell on the road and was trampled on, and the birds of the air devoured it. However, some fell on stony ground, but as soon as it sprang up, it was withered away because it had no root. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up with it and choked it. And some fell on good ground, and when it sprang up, it yielded much fruit. The sower there is the Lord, and the seed is his word, thus truth. The seed on the road is the truth among the people who did not care about the truth. The seed on stony ground is the truth among people who care about truth, but not for its own sake, thus not inwardly. The seed among thorns is the truth among people caught up in lusts for evil. But the seed on good ground is the truth among people who are moved by the Lord to love the truths in the word and put them into practice, thus bear fruit. That these classes of people are meant is clear from the Lord's explanation of the parable in Matthew and Mark and Luke. It is apparent from this that the words truth cannot take root in people who do not care about the truth, or in people who love truth outwardly but not inwardly, or in people caught up in lusts for evil. But it does take root in people whose lusts for evil have been dispersed by the Lord. In their case, the seed, or rather truth, takes root in their spiritual mind. And now may the Lord add blessing to the reading, the understanding, and the living out of these holy words. Amen.
Amen. So we have the parable of the sower. We'll get to that. Start with a question. Why is God so generous with all those scattering of the seeds everywhere? If you were a proper farmer or gardener, you would make sure that everything's prepared properly with great soil and watering systems, sunlight, everything that you need. Let me start with a reflection from Father Rohr on thirsting for justice. And he starts with a meditation on Matthew 5 or 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. They shall have their fill. So Father Rohr connects righteousness with justice. In this beatitude, it's both spiritual and social. Most Bibles to this day soften this beatitude. Hunger and thirst for what is right, or, quote, for righteousness, are the more common. And I would argue faulty translations. But the word in Greek it clearly means justice. Notice that the concept of justice is used halfway through the Beatitudes. And again at the very end. It's a couplet, reiterating the point. To live the just life in the world is to have identified with the longings and hungers of the poor, the meek, and those who weep. This identification and solidarity are already a profound form of social justice. The peace activist John Deere, who has spent his life working for nonviolence, writes about this beatitude. Righteousness is not just the private practice of doing good. It sums up the global responsibility of the human community to make sure that every human being has what they need, that everyone pursues a fair sense of justice for every other human being, and that everyone lives in right relationship with one another, creation, and God. Jesus instructs us to be passionate for social, economic, and racial justice. That's the real meaning of the Hebrew word for justice and the Jewish insistence on it. Resist systemic, structured, institutionalized injustice with every bone in your body, with all your might, with your very soul, he teaches. Seek justice as if it were your food and drink, your bread and water, as if it were a matter of life and death, which it is. Within our relationship to the God of justice and peace, those who give their lives to that struggle, Jesus promises, will be satisfied. How do we hunger and thirst for justice? By making global justice a priority in our lives. This beatitude requires us to join a grassroots movement that fights one or two issues of injustice and to get deeply involved in the struggle, since all issues of injustice are connected. Fighting one injustice puts us squarely in the struggle against every injustice. As Martin Luther King Jr. said over and over again, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Befriend the victims of systemic injustice, side with them. Listen to their stories, let their pain break your heart. Join the movements to end injustice. Tithe your money to the cause and commit yourself to the struggle. While it may take a long time, our nonviolent persistence and truth-telling will eventually win out and bear the good fruit of justice. Truth is on our side. God is on the side of justice. The arc of the moral universe is long, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. famously said, but it bends towards justice. So I wanted to kick us off this morning with that theme of justice and seeking justice. And as I was listening to the sermon of the bishop that grew up here in the church, who just happened to be, as a teenager, in a pageant, she put on the garb of the bishop, and she was sharing how you never know how the seeds unfold in life. She said to herself that if she was to put it out to her peers, they would probably not pick her as the one that would join the priesthood, and yet here she was joining us in that position. And she was there along with Reverend Jason Shelby yesterday at the consecration of the new bishop, and it was a reminder of the dual role of the Good Shepherd. Not only is the large episcopate staff there that is given as part of the ceremony for the new archdiocese or the diocese of the Los Angeles area, but it's got two roles. One is the role of the staff of the shepherd, and it's got a dual purpose. And she was sharing the dual purpose that was shared in what was expressed by the new bishop, which was love and truth. It should seem fairly familiar to all of us here. We celebrate divine love with divine wisdom, and that marriage is how we understand the fullness of God. And I want to just lift up one precious piece about that, which is to stand up, to lead in the position of the shepherd. Pastor is the Latin that means shepherd. There's also a dual nature, which is to call out truth, where truth needs to be called out. To call a wolf, and it was a reminder as well that the staff is also a weapon to be used to fend off the wolves. So I want to start with that because I think that allows us to enter a bit more deeply into the journey. And I'm not going to spend too much time on the long, lengthy journey of Abram and Sarai, but today we are continuing that story. And I've been talking about this because we're not the only church. I do generally follow the lectionary, and it has a 3-year theme where you get to, essentially, if you're following a 3-year cycle, you get most of the stories in the Bible containing the Old and the New. And I think just in summary, if there's anything we can really glean from a deeper spiritual perspective, it's just how messy life can be in our family systems, out in the world, and these stories in the Bible ground us in some of that messiness. We enter the story today. It's a challenge. We've got, we already know that these twins are already fighting in the womb. We see this start early on, and if you have siblings, you know that certain things in family dynamics, they play out in certain ways. And this thirst for justice is here as well. So I'm just going to kind of weave through this in a quick fashion because I'm going on vacation, so I'm not going to get into the reconciliation between Jacob and Esau. But it's it's interesting to see how this plays out in this story and how we too can get caught up in giving up birthrights, things that are meaningful in a moment of haste, things that have large consequences when we are not grounded and rooted at a deeper level. And in this case, it was some tasty lentil soup. And it was fascinating because I was at the Garden Church, and Reverend Dr. Amanda brings lunch for our ministry team. And it happened to be a lentil curry, a tasty soup. So it provided good observation about how tasty it was and how good it was and what we might give for this soup. So it was just a fun, light conversation about entering into the story and the two natures that are there, the person that's more inclined to be out in the wild and hunting, the other that's spending time in tents and cooking. And we see that relationship play out. It's not overly extreme, I suppose, when you're at an extreme hunger and you're thinking, well, what is the use of my birthright if I'm going to die right now? We all, in some ways, are playing with these same themes in our own lives about whether it's inheritance and how much we have and where it's going and where we are presently. We don't have time to get into all of that in this sermon. But the story, it also deals with integrity, with honesty, all these things that are themes that are very relevant in our own present time and space. We do have to kind of reconcile this as well. It's a messy story because not only, if we understand how this birthright is happening, you'd have to understand that the spoken word, someone swearing that they're going to tell you the truth, is actual, and that it's sustainable, and that what they have said actually means what they've said. And I was thinking about this in the context of our modern times, about how that's changed. In the ancient world, that actually meant something, including your birthright, which was, if you're the firstborn, which was Esau, you got double portion. So in this moment, a tasty meal is presented. He said, I'll give you this, but you have to give me your birthright. It was a big deal. Now, fast forward, it doesn't get complete. That was one part of the transaction, to have someone swear their birthright. The second part, which is not in this story, but if you've read the Bible, you know this other one, which is he had to also get it from the father. And that combination would seal the deal. And so Jacob's a crafty, sneaky guy. I mean, he not only is able to get the birthright from his older brother, his twin, but then basically, pretends to be him by putting on, wool's, his mother helps him out by deceiving his father, who's old and can't see, and gives the patriarchal word of his blessing. So the combination of those two really is what seals the deal for the inheritance, the double portion, and takes his birthright. It's messy, it's complicated. The father loves one more than the other, the mother loves the other one. We all are born in families that have mixed heritage in terms of how those dynamics play out, and we're not going to get into family system theory here, but we can understand the constellations and how they all help inform us. I do quickly want to go into what happens. They eventually do get reconciled. But after the second deception, the one that steals away the birthright, obviously Esau's not happy and goes after Jacob to the point where Jacob fears his life. Feels like he's going to be killed by his brother. Has to go into hiding for a couple decades, or at least a decade. And what's fascinating in bringing this back to the big moment, after time away, Jacob is ready to reconcile with his brother, and he doesn't know what's going to happen. So he sends forward all these gifts to Esau, and he's ready to make peace. He's trying to reconcile it, but he doesn't know if his brother is actually going to he does send out an army of 400 people. It's a big moment. We don't know if that hatred is going to continue to be destructive or not. That night, the night before going to meet with his brother and reconcile after a long period of time, that is when Jacob meets the angel, wrestles with the angel all night, is struck on the hip, walks with a limp afterwards, is humbled, and they are reconciled. The meeting could have gone either way. It's one of the most epic reconciliation stories in the Old Testament. They greet one another with open arms. They forgive one another. They respect one another. They move on to their lives and their families. And just the importance of that moment with Jacob. Jacob, after wrestling with God, is given the new name, Israel, which we still use to this day. So it kind of gives a little bit of flavor to not only the story back then, but what we're still wrestling with in our world. And in a grander scale, all the descendants, the matriarchs, the patriarchs, we're still looking at a world that is in this mixed heritage, trying to reconcile all of this, trying to make sense of it. It also speaks in these scripture readings to the power of the spoken word, how powerful that can be, especially in our spiritual lives and in our spiritual growth. I want to lift up one line from Psalm 119 that was read. Your word is a lantern to my feet and a light upon my path. Your word is a lantern, a light to my feet and a light upon my path. I mention that one because many a pastor has framed that on a wall, or it's been one that's lifted up, because when you actually get it, when one of those seeds has been thrown and has found some good soil, you realize that there's something there that's going to give us a light upon our path. No matter what life throws at us, we have a way through with God. There is relationship in that God is helping us to light the way. And it's more about the next step we're going to be taking. God will show us. And I like these parables of these pathways. Which path are we going to take? And one of those paths is going to light up a little bit more than the other, especially when we're trying on different scenarios. Something is going to, if we're open to it, the Lord is going to show us which is the path that is got more support behind it, that God is going to continue to light it. And then the phrase from Isaiah. It's a powerful one. As the rain and the snow come down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that it goes out from my mouth, and it shall not return to me empty, but it shall accomplish what I purpose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. Again, the power of the spoken word, the power of how these seeds of enlightenment can land within us. If it finds good soil, it's going to take root. It's going to grow. It's going to bring us peace and joy. So I mention those seeds because I too have, I've wrestled with God. Not so much of a limp, yet maybe a little bit of a stiffness there. But the thing I want to share with you, which was pretty fascinating, this week I'm getting ready for a road trip. Had to go get new brakes put on, and I went to the Toyota dealership. Now, that's pretty common. What was interesting was I had taken this car to get an oil change just about 3 weeks ago. And they, at the time, had said, your brakes are low, it's about 20%, you need to get them replaced. So I went back, was talking with the service people then. I said, well, I wasn't sure if it was the front brakes or the back brakes. So I talked to several people. First person was looking at the notes and couldn't actually identify which one was right. The notes were like, well, maybe it's the front, maybe it's the back. I don't know. Let's go talk to this person. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this story is if you've been to most dealerships, or at least the Toyota dealerships around here, they have kind of like you pull in and there's little tiny cubicles where they do pull up your information. They're small, they're tiny. And the person's cubicle that I was taken to, it was noticeable that this person, this individual, had this music playing in the background. Not any type of music, but something only a highly trained person like myself would perceive, and was waiting for an opening in the conversation to say, is that binaural solfeggio music you have playing in the background? Why, yes, it is. How did you know? Oh, I know. I know these things. So, not every person's going to know that. They're just going to think that's ambient music. Maybe music that you're playing when you're getting a massage or something. But no, I have studied this. And what was fascinating was I said, well, why are you playing that? That's not your average thing. He said, well, my doctor told me that this might be helpful for my stress. And I said, yes, it is. And I went into the long history about Guido from Arezzo in the 8th century. I talked about how the brain interprets one frequency in this year. If it's different from this one, that you want to use headphones to have your brain actually make the translation between the frequencies. And I was ready to talk to this guy for another 3 hours. The point is, I had started researching this back in about 2017, about 2018. I got more interested. I thought about the value of frequency. And I'd even thought about, I did a doctorate in ministry that has a whole chapter that's on frequency. I considered writing books about this thing. But it's not overly, so I didn't do a whole lot around marketing this thing, but it happened without me doing anything, just kind of understanding it. The reason I'm sharing this with you is I was so happy to walk into what is more of a very corporate environment in a high-stress situation with someone there that the other people went to because they were like the one that knew stuff. He seemed very relaxed, knew what he was doing, and was supported not only by this frequency that he was playing, but I noticed it, and it was supported too by the doctor that recommended it. I said, okay, look at that. The seeds that have started are blooming out in the world, and it's nothing that I physically did, that I did. But I mention that story as well because when we're talking about the spoken word, when we're talking about the conversations, when we're talking about things in our lives and the interactions we have, we never know what's going to land with another person. And I'm privileged in this position to know that, sometimes it's interesting because I'll talk to someone afterwards about a sermon and they'll reference something that I know I didn't actually say, but it's probably something they needed to hear. And it happens. There's some mystery that happens in those. So just to wind this up here, we're going to have our time with a special gathering with the bishop here, so we'll make sure that we're getting out in time for that. But I want to really bring this back to how we too can take with us what we found. That is of value, that can be shared, because anything that is actually deeply spiritual, that is rooted in God, is not meant to be our own. And in the act of sharing it, we are carrying out and living out this parable of the seed and the potential for growth. just to kind of put a bow on all the themes in the Scripture, especially from the Old Testament, we are reminded of how messy life can be. And even in that, God uses it. God uses everything. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is left behind. And I like to reference we have the miracle of the feast this morning of all the bounty. And even in the miracles, Jesus sends out the disciples with the baskets and brings back that which can be used as well. So all these situations, the path that is lighted in front of us, the parable of those seeds that have been sown, if they're in good soil, we trust it. We continue to nourish it, and it brings forth great fruit. As for what was sown among thorns, this is like the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the lure of wealth choke off the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and yields. In one case, 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. May the Lord help us all to bear good fruit. Amen.